see you. We've been speaking about faith over the last 3 weeks. This is the third message we've had on faith, and I'm just trying to keep everything really simple. Black and white is kind of the theme throughout, because we're just trying to kind of pare it all away and bring it down to what it really is. And we can sometimes get the wrong ideas of what faith really is, and sometimes we confuse faith and works. We confuse what we believe in with what we believe. So we've really been concentrating on one thing in particular, that is this, that if you poll a lot of people, if you just went through the streets of Dyer and asked people at random, do you believe in God? The overwhelming majority of people would say, yes, I believe in God, but that's not faith. Faith is believing God. Faith is not whether I believe in God. Faith is, do I believe God? That's why we pray. We don't pray because we believe in God. We pray because we believe God. And there is a huge difference between the two of them. So if you'd open your Bibles to the book of Mark, the 12th chapter, we find a woman with profound faith. We find, in just a couple of verses, we find people who believe in God and a person who believes God. So the book of Mark, the 12th chapter. Mark, if you know, is one of the eyewitnesses of Jesus. And he was a contemporary of Jesus. He went around with Paul. You remember the character named John Mark. And we find him writing one of these stories in one of the epistles, or one of the Gospels about Jesus. And most theologians will tell you that Peter told Mark what to write down. And so we call the book of Mark, but it's probably Peter's eyewitness' account of what he saw, and he told Mark, here, write this down. And so we go to the book of Mark, the 12th chapter, we find what is being said at an occasion when Jesus was at the synagogue. And so let's just pick that in Mark chapter 12, verse 41. And Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. And then a poor widow came by and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny, listen to that word, a tiny part of their surplus. But she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. You see, this first group of people, this group of people right here, we would call those who believed in God. Now, there's no doubt that they had some faith, but their faith had become more of a religious ceremony. They came as a show of, look what I am giving. Their righteousness was not found in their trust in God. Their righteousness was found in themselves and what they were able to give out of their surplus. Now, Jesus acknowledges these are great, large sums of money. But these large sums of money come out of their surplus. They're extra. There's no real sacrifice given here. There's no real faith given here. There's no real trust imparted into God. What they were doing was celebrating and showing off their abundance. And out of their abundance, they gave a portion. Now, in the old law, the Jewish law, the portion was generally considered 10%. It was called a tithe. The word tithe means 10%, a tenth. And so for them, it was very clear that they were going to give 10%, and maybe they even gave a little bit more than 10%, but for them it became a religious exercise. Look at me, look what I'm able to give because I am so rich. You ever notice how rich people, when they give, they want to make sure everybody knows?
I've given so much money to this charity or that charity, and it's a very small, like 2 or 3% of their income. So they want everybody to know that they gave $100,000, but they make $100 million. It's a very small portion. And that's what can happen to us if we're not careful. Our faith can become a ceremony. It can be an outpouring of, look at me. Look what I am able to do. It's not based on faith. It's certainly not based in grace. It's based on, look what I can give. Because out of my abundance, I'm able to give great amounts. Jesus was not impressed. Now you and I, we would be impressed. I mean, if somebody was walk in today and drop 100 grand in their offering plate a little bit later, and I'm not discouraging anybody who wants to do that. If you want to do that, we'll be happy to but we would probably be, wow, can you believe? And we would, we talk it among us and go, now, can you believe that John gave $100,000? And the church would be abuzz and the word would get around. Can you believe how much he gave? And then when that person would walk into the church, we would make sure that we'd shake his hand and pat him on the back because we want to acknowledge his generosity. And so each one of these people who were given these amounts, it was self-congratulations. It was, look what I have done. It became a works-based religion. Jesus was not impressed. You see, the rich, it was a celebration. For them, it was a celebration. Look what we have done. Look what we have accomplished. Just look at us. And then there was the second person in this account. She gave 2 pennies, 2 small coins. A poor widow. And I want you to pay attention to that verse 42. It says, a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. So now just take this in for a minute. Here were people bringing in bags of money. And there was a lot of pomp and ceremony going on. And the bigger the bag that you had, the more oohs and ahs you got as you were walking down the aisle. Because it wasn't just pass a plate like we have. There was a box that was put in the front, and they would bring in their percentage, and they would put it up front for everyone to see. And I'm sure that they would get as much as they could into a bag as they could so that everybody could see how much they have brought. But then there's this exact opposite. Here comes a poor widow, and she gives 2 small coins. Pennies, dimes, nickels. We don't know how much it was, but we do know what percentage it was. Listen to what Jesus has to say about this. Jesus called the disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth. This poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. Now, I want you to pay attention to that word poor widow, but I want to talk about 2 things here. First is the word poor. And the second is widow. There are 3 descriptions or 3 degrees of poor that are described in the New Testament. And we have, Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit. And this word poor has 3 degrees. The first poor we would call American poor. We would say, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I don't have a lot. I'm poor. I'm not like the guy down the street who has a motorhome, that kind of rich. I'm talking about poor. I'm talking about poor, living paycheck to paycheck. All right? I don't have have much, but I have enough. But by the world standards, by American standards, we would call them poverty. All right, that's the first degree of poor. And then there is a second degree of poor, and that is day to day. I'm not just living paycheck to paycheck. I'm living day to day. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I managed to get through today, and tomorrow is coming, but that's that second kind of poor. And then there's a third kind of poor. And that's the meal to meal. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," this is the poor he was referring to. I am so poor, I don't know where my next meal is coming from. The kind of the poor this was the beggar who would beg for alms. The kind of poor this was the man who was laying beside the pool when Jesus came up and asked him if he wanted to be healed. This is the kind of poor of the person holding up the sign that says, "We'll work for food," so desperately poor that I don't know where my next meal is coming from, and I'm relying on someone else to help me out. That's the kind of poor that this widow was. All that she had was 2 small coins. And when she gives that up, she has nothing left. She now is completely reliant on someone else. But she gives it to the right person. She gives all she has to God. And notice the second word I said, widow. She's a widow. We don't know how she came to be a widow. I mean, we do know that her husband died. That's how you become a widow. But we don't know how long she's been a widow. The Bible doesn't tell us any of those things. All that we know is that she has had a period of time where she's desperately poor. Now, in this culture, if you were a widow, your husband was your main means of support. And if your husband was to pass away, you lost your livelihood. The women were not educated in this culture. They did not have trades. They certainly couldn't go down and join a local union and become a pipe fitter. They were relegated to whatever their family was able to give them. There's no mention of a family. There's no mention of anyone else. All we have is a widow, and she's desperately poor. So maybe she's so poor she doesn't have children, or maybe her children are moved away. Whatever has brought her to this place, she is by herself, and she's totally reliant on the Lord to provide what she's been given. Now, remember, the Pharisees and those who were giving out of their abundance were giving, and there was a great celebration. But in my mind's eye, as I look through the eyes of Jesus, and I see this woman give these 2 coins and put them in the box, I see joy. I don't see desperation. I see a woman who has a history of saying, I've been this place before. I've given before, and God has come through. I've seen the Lord work before. I'm giving all I have, but I'm not concerned about it because I know the Lord's going to come through. There was a young shepherd boy, and his name was David. You may have heard of him. He rose to be the king of Israel and the greatest king of Israel. But he wasn't always the king of Israel. There was a time when he was just a shepherd boy, taking care of some sheep in his father's fields, far away from home. Far enough away from home that if there was trouble, he was on his own. And sure enough, there was trouble. And as he was tending his sheep, a lion attacked one of his sheep. And he, with his little sling, was able to defend his sheep and rescue that one of those sheep the lion was going to attack. But that's not the only time. There was a second time, and then there was a bear that came, and the bear was attacking the sheep, and he, with his little sling, rescued and saved his sheep because he had killed a lion, and now he's killed a bear. And through that lion killing and through that bear killing, he learned that he could trust in God no matter the circumstance. And then as he was going to meet his brothers, you remember, if you've been in Sunday school, you'll remember the story of this little boy named David, 16, 17 years of old. He goes to meet his brothers and bring them some cheese. And there's this great big giant named Goliath who's defying the armies of the living God. And he's speaking out some terrible things. And David, little David says, who is this guy? How dare he defy and defile the armies of the living God? And because of his experience with the lion, and because of his experience with the bear, his faith taught him, I can't even defeat Goliath with God's help. Life has taught me that when I give it to God, I'm never disappointed. So this widow, I don't imagine this is the first time that she's done that. And she's certainly not doing it to impress anyone. How are 2 small coins going to impress, I guess, bags and bags of money? Now they're having a big celebration. Look what I'm bringing in. And this woman comes in with 2 small coins and she gives all she has. Here's what I want to talk with you this morning about when it comes to faith. What we really believe shows up in what we do. What we really, really believe shows up in our actions. We can say all day long what we believe, but what you really believe shows up in what we're doing. I've given this illustration before a couple of times. I'll give it again for those who have not heard it before. But suppose at 11:05, it's 11:02 right now, 11:03. At 11:05, this roof is coming down. And we know without a shadow of a doubt that at 11:05, this roof is coming down. It's 11:02. Are you waiting till 11:04? No, you're leaving now. Because your faith that this roof is coming down at 11:05 compels you, I'm out of here. I'm not sticking around till 11:04:58. I'm getting out now because what we believe always shows up in what we do. Now this first group of people, they believed in God. And so they brought in tithes and they brought in all the pomp and all the circumstance because they believed in God. But this widow, she believed God because her actions showed it. She gave all that she had. 11:05. I didn't see anybody make a mad dash for the door yet. Wow, timing. Now everything's got to reboot, so we'll just give it a few minutes to reboot. Where was I? So, our actions always show up in what we do.
Yeah, right.
So this woman, her actions followed because she believed God to the point that she was willing to give Him everything she had. What was most dear to her, she let go of. Because maybe it was not what was most dear to her. What was most dear to her was her faith and her trust in God. see, in our lives, what we do, and man, I am speaking from experience. I am the king of holding on. I'm the king of not letting go. But we often, what we try to do is we try to hold on to that thing that we really need to let go of and give to God. Man, we'll get a death grip on that very thing that we really need to release and let go of. You see, this woman, she was a widow, and she could have held on to bitterness because of her circumstances. She could have been mad at God and say, God, you took away my husband. You took away my livelihood. Where are my kids? I'm not giving you anything because you've taken everything from me. I have nothing left. You've taken it all. I'm not giving you one red cent. She didn't do that. She didn't let bitterness creep into her life. She continued to trust in God in spite of her circumstances. And so the thing that we hold on the most to is the thing that we need to be willing to release. We all have had circumstances in our lives that have been very, very difficult. We have a widows group that meets on once a month, on Thursdays. They have a chance to all be bitter and angry. I hear a lot of laughter. Life can be tough. Circumstances can be so that we could get better. But when we let go, that's when faith tries in. You see, if you really want to impress God, we don't impress God with our good deeds. We don't impress God with all of our works. We don't impress God with all of our giving. We impress God with our faith. What are we holding on to? And we need to let go of. Is there some bitterness in your life that you hold on to that you've never been willing to give up to God? Is there some resentment going on in your life that maybe something happened to you when you were 10 or 12 or 15 or 18 or 20 years of age? Maybe someone has harmed you in some significant way and you've decided, I'd like to just hold on to that and massage it and make it so that I'm never going to forgive that person. That person really harmed me, so rather than give it away to God, hold on to it. Maybe it is money. Maybe you hold on to your money so tightly that you've forgotten the joy of being generous. And you put all of your eggs in the basket of my basket. So you don't release and find the joy of giving. Maybe it's prejudice. Maybe it's political. Maybe you just like someone from the other party so much that you can't be around them. I love it whenever there's a political cycle going on and all the people are going to move to Canada if such and such is elected. If Hillary's elected, I'm moving to Canada. If Trump was elected, I'm moving to Canada. And man, all of the fighting that goes on. What do we hold on to? As we get ready to close out the service, we're going to take some time and we're going to close out the message rather. We're going to have some time of meditation. We're going to gather around the Lord's table today. Jesus gave us some emblems to remember Him by. And the sacrifice that He gave for us. And He gave us a fruit of the vine to remember the blood that was shed for us. And He gave us the bread that represents the body that was broken for us. And we're going to partake of those in a few minutes, but before we get to that point, I just want us to stop and just spend some moments and just saying, God, I know what it is that I hold on to. Everybody in this room, you know what it is that you're holding on to. We all have that thing that we've been holding on to for a long time, but we just never had the courage to let go of. And so today, before we take up the Lord's Supper, I just want us to spend a few minutes to say, Lord, give me the courage to let go. How would it be like this woman that all she had was 2 coins and she was willing to let go? Whatever it is that's got a hold of you, you need to release. Anger, bitterness, resentment. Let's give them to the Lord. You see, what we're willing to give God is a reflection of our trust in God. Because if I'm not really willing to let go of that thing that I need to let go of, what we're really saying is that I believe in God, I just don't trust God. As long as I can hold on to it, I can control it. And God is saying, when you let go of it, that's when you finally find freedom. You see, anyone who's ever given God everything has never been disappointed. Anyone who's ever given God everything has never said that was a mistake. Anyone who's ever given God everything will always say the joy that comes to releasing to the Lord, it's that joy that you can't describe. So, Roland, before you come and lead us a song before we take the Lord's Supper, I want everyone just to quietly meditate on what it is that we're holding on to, that we know we need to let go of, and trust God with that thing and hold on to something. Would you stand? Father, we come to you today in full acknowledgement that we have things in our lives that we've never released to you. It's not that we really want to hold on to them because they really make us miserable. It's just that we've never really fully trusted with you. We've never really believed that you could handle that. So God, you've given us so much grace. You've shown us over and over again in our lives that your grace is more than enough. But yet, we still hold on to things that we think that we can fix them. So God, today we acknowledge that we have things in our lives that we need to give totally to you. And as we gather around the table today, we acknowledge that you've given everything to us. You held nothing back. So now we hold nothing back. We give it all to you. In the name of Jesus, we pray these things. Amen. Would you stay standing?